Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome back to another installment of Better Off Dead, the worst sequels in horror. And yes, today we are covering another Luke pick. So, Luke,
hmm
why don't you introduce us to what we're talking about today?
Oh man, well, I think we got a real winner on our hands here for a Better Off Dead. But Sleepaway Camp, the original, is such a staple in the horror community. Where, I talk about kind of these more so hidden gems within the horror community. I feel like The Burning is one of them. Sleepaway Camp falls in line with that, where you get into horror and you got your Freddy's, Jason's, Michaels, all the basics. And then as you kind of take the next step into really diving down the horror rabbit hole, you start finding these kind of offbeat, weirder kind of horror things. And Sleepaway Camp certainly falls into that. It's a classic amongst horror fans. Very unique story, very different, and very offbeat. But it works, I feel, for that one. And then we kind of get into the sequels. And I'm going to admit that this one here was a new pick for me, new viewing, 100%. As soon as we kind of started workshopping this idea, I knew the Sleepaway Camp sequels were not very good. I had seen the second one, and I was like, okay, that's gonna be my pick. And then I was like, well, wait a second, let me venture out and see what this third one looks like. And I was like, and then I had to pivot. And I was like, Sleepaway Camp 3. What is this one? Teenage Wasteland is an
Yes.
absolute. Well, we'll get into it, but it's not a very good pick.
Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland.
Kind of getting into this one, that kind of little synopsis here is where I didn't write anything. I'm just kind of talking about it. But that opening scene where we have one of the characters that's very short lived,
Yes.
Maria, getting ready to go to camp. And for some reason, a big trash truck just comes barreling down the road and takes her out. And then we find out that it's Angela, the star of the Sleepaway Camp series, who is dressed just like her because obviously she knew what she was putting on that day, and takes her spot in. The camp is
Camp New
escape room.
Horizons, isn't
There
it?
we go. Thank you, Dylan. And we have this unique concept, I guess, where it's kind of the very privileged side of these kids, and then the kind of inner city kids. So you kind of have this melding of different people. I don't know if they thought maybe they were going to go with, we got a very very heavy social commentary here, but boy, it's offensive, it's weird, and it does not work.
Yeah, no, this movie is definitely for a modern day audience. Yeah, this is that kind of backwoods grindhouse kind of
Absolutely.
horror film. They don't shy away from a lot of stuff. Like it's very blatant with a lot of characters of different ethnic backgrounds being like racially profiled
Yes,
and
very
called all kinds of
stereotypical.
slurs and things like that. So
It's
if
wild. Some of the
if
things I had to do a double take because I was like,
yeah,
did I just hear what I heard?
if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, which believe me, we do not blame you. Like we're not. This isn't a soaring endorsement to go seek this movie out, but like then you're warned from watching this because yeah, that's all over this movie, and like it is definitely something that catches you off guard, and you want to say that it's like oh, it's of its time. But even then, like it's 1989, like we're coming into the early 90s. Like Friday the 13th and stuff like that, which was considered earlier on in the 80s to be kind of this backwoods grindhouse kind of horror flicks. Even they didn't go that deep with a lot of
Never.
that stuff. They
No.
never crossed those kind of lines. Like their whole thing was ultra violence and nudity, where this does have a lot of nudity and some ultra violence, but then they just wanted to take it a step further with the vulgarity and some of the scenarios that they put you into. Because like there is heavy, I guess I don't even know if you want to say implied or hints. It's pretty blatant acts of pedophilia.
Daddy won't make you go fishing if you don't want to, sweet pea.
in this.
Yes,
And I
and
mean, that's nothing that's a stranger to this franchise either, we
absolutely
have to say, because the
from
first
the
film there's
original.
a
Yeah.
character, um, but even then that character gets their comeuppance in a pretty satisfying way.
And
Um,
to kind of to go into that, very unsettling. I believe the character's name is Herman, and he's one of the
mhm,
he's married to, I'm not sure of her name, but they run the camp. And it's one thing for it to be implied and to never really go full force with it, and then the character gets what's coming to him. This one, they really go heavy into it. I mean, there's an actual act going on, and it's
mhm.
just like at one point, I'm like trying to put together how old the one character is, and I'm like, are they really going down this route? Because this is really risky to do. And like you're saying, like Friday 13th at a point, especially when that first came out, was kind of seen as lower tier just because it is horror. But those films across the board, from most horror things, don't really touch on these kinds of themes. And I think there's a reason for it. It's not that I feel like Sleepaway Camp was being bold in their kind of storytelling here. I think this was just kind of smut, really, and it's odd. I don't think the audience would enjoy it. Like, it's like one of those things where you you almost like when a character is so bad that you can't wait for them to get their head chopped off or beaten with a stick or whatever. But this one is just like it's so off-putting. I tuned out, especially for that kill right afterward. I'm like, I was so it gave me such a
It's
weird feeling that I was like, no,
and we'll get into the kills here too, because again, they're not even the most extraordinary things. There's a couple of
no.
creative ones, but like that guy gets beaten to death with a stick, and it's like he's just like hardly even like reacting to it. He's like, ow, oh,
And
ow, oh,
is
and
it
then
like
and then he's just implied that he's dead. It's just like, dude, what the fuck?
is it
Like,
like one of the most lazy beatings you've ever seen in terms of,
yeah.
usually we have like, even if it's just one swift whack and that's how we go.
Mhm.
This is so like long and drawn out. And Angela, I think, goes after the other character as well. And it's just like, what is going on here?
I love that they're the budget for this, and I'll get into that in a minute of what exactly the production history is on this, because I do know a little bit of that. I listened to a couple of things to get prepared for this. So the funny thing about that sequence though is, and it's not the only time that they do this, but they use the exact same sound effect for every single swing and hit. So it's
Oh,
legitimately like, if you didn't catch that, it's the same sound effect over and over and over again. So it's like there's no differentiation in like where she's hitting them, of like, how, like, if you were to actually Foley this film, you would say, if you're hitting somebody in the head, uh, like with the intent to kill, it'd probably make a different sound than hitting them in the stomach. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like it's just one of those things where no, they were just like, yeah, we're just gonna hit him. It's a hitting sound. Let's just keep using it. It does, not work well for horror's sake, but I mean, it does. It's pretty fucking funny to watch. I will say that this film, take the more offensive elements out of it, which I mean, I guess are intentional. Is one of those things where it's like, this is pretty much just a so bad that I wouldn't necessarily say on my end that it's good, considering it's on this show, but it is just one of those films where it's like, you got to understand what you're in for here. Like, this is really like D grade filmmaking here.
Yeah, and like where we had talked about Terrifier, and that's kind of a showcase of just gore in general. At least it's gore that has been well thought out. It's intricate. They want to get those real close up shots. It's pretty visceral in a sense. Whereas, like looking at Sleepaway Camp 3, it is almost like, okay, we have that beginning part of the story. We have this kind of underlying story going throughout this film, uh, you know, weak as it is, but I think it's place and time in terms of we just got to get these characters into a camp so that Angela can kill them, and it's just like, okay, if that's what you're gonna go for, then put the effort into it. Where it's like all these kills, everything here just seems so lazy, so half baked, so like you're saying that sound is a repetitive sound, not even getting a new sound for it. It's like at least make those things well done here, because I know you're going to go into the production stuff in a little bit. Whereas, in post production here, at least think of sounds that you need to get, even if it's one or two extra sounds for that to make it to differentiate it, so it's not as like the same thing over and over and over again. It just, there is no level of care in this film.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you could tell like some of the kills were lazier than others, because there is one that, from a creative standpoint, is interesting and it's gruesome. But even then, it's like the payoff is never going to be as like gory and satisfying as like you kind of want from something that's trying to be this lowbrow. Because like you bring up Terrifier 1 in the sense of like it is a showcase. It's there to display this character, this potential serial killer icon, and it's one of those things where it's like when we reviewed that, we were just like, yeah, I want more story, I want something from this, which the sequel gives you. So it's like you can look back on that fondly. And like the first film in this series, I would say is pretty good. It's like it's definitely still that more lower brow kind of horror, but it is one of those things where it's like they do attempt to give you a twist and everything like that. I'm sure everybody knows it by now, but I won't spoil it here because we'll probably end up talking about the first one at some point. But it's one of those things where it's like you could see there was intent there. But I guess I'll just get into the production side of this, because this film was literally made on leftover money from the sequel. So how this went down was they got approved, the team, to go out and make Sleepaway Camp 2. They shot it under schedule and under budget. So all great things for low budget filmmaking, wouldn't you say? Like, that's a dream. Good for you guys. They called the studio and the producers were like, well, shit, you got a few more weeks. You got some money. Go make another one. And they were just like, excuse me? Like, what the fuck? Like, we're not going to just make another movie. And then they're just like, yes, you are. Go make another movie. So they make Sleepaway Camp 3. And that's where this all gets kind of slapped together. And I mean, you can really tell, because there isn't like anything all that visceral of a set piece at all. And I'm not super familiar with these other sequels. I saw 2 a long time ago, and that's about as deep as I went. I know of the infamy as the series continued, so this was a first viewing for me as well. But like, yeah, you can just tell that this was slapped together with a stick of gum and popsicle sticks.
Yes.
And
And
go
that's
ahead.
where, forgive me, because I think maybe I looked this up weeks ago during my viewing of this, that maybe this script was either still being written in pre-production as they were really getting into the third film. So they didn't really have a full script, I thought, as they were going along. It was one of those, let's run and gun this, and it's like it shows, because there's not really a story here. And like where you're saying, there's a couple of there's at least one good kill. I think there is maybe a couple that are at least decent. But again, where it's like, we have like 3 good kills, and the rest of them, Angela's just going to beat you with a stick or shoot you. And that's
Yeah.
really where we're going to go with. It's like, and that's it. And then with some of the stuff, I mean, I know the MPAA was a thing, but in terms of editing this thing down, but even with the level of gore in this, where you can't even say this is like a full-on gore fest, because it's so neutered for the majority of this, that you're coming into this film, you're not getting story, you're not really getting the gore, you're not getting the good kills, you're certainly not getting any acting, and you're just getting kind of offensive storytelling. Whereas like there's 100 strikes against this film and not any positives.
Yeah, and it is one of those ones where it's like you need to know the market that you're in right now when it comes to watching this. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that if you're just a casual slasher fan to even remotely go down this, like you need to understand what kind of a horror film you're getting into. You need to be a pure horror fan to even, I think, give these movies, as they go along, the time of day.
And
And
even then it's risky. I
it is.
mean,
But like, it's one of those things too where it's like I understand that this franchise does have its fans. And again, I will go back to the first one and say that one is definitely one of those slashers that I look back at and I'm just like, no, that is the closest this series gets to legitimate in my mind.
yeah.
And I can understand that being a classic. So it's like one of those things where it's like it's like I said, it takes risks and it does things. It does tote that line, but they've completely thrown the line out the window and they have just decided we're going to just do the most depraved shit we can do to shock people and to get and to sell tickets. And that's what they did. And what's strange is that you look into this one isn't even considered the worst in the franchise. It's the fourth one is a little bit of new footage with all flashbacks with footage from, I believe, the first, second, and third.
That's 2008 or something like that.
No. That's the one that you're thinking of is even worse. Apparently, it's called Return to Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, okay.
So there's a Sleepaway Camp 4, very hard to find. Apparently, it's one of those ones that you have to like kind of seek out a copy. I don't even think it's on Blu-ray. I'll double
Was
check
this the
that.
Survivor?
I think so.
Because did that even see the light of day? I thought there was like 40 minutes of footage of that
Yeah,
film.
there's only like it's not even a real movie.
I think they lost all their money. They like went bankrupt or something.
Yeah,
I feel.
so like the
I don't know
first
100%
three
on
are
that,
on Blu-ray, and then Return to Sleepaway Camp is like the one from 2008 or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like if you want to talk about some of these kills, I mean, there are some that are complete lack of creativity. Like you said, at one point, Angela gets her hands on a gun and just starts shooting people. And there's a high body count in this. And for having such a high body count, the fact that you hardly see anything is very disappointing. It makes it so unsatisfying.
And that's where it's like, at this point where we talk about the first one, and at least there's a unique twist there, especially for that time period where things like that touched on. So it would be jarring for an audience. Whereas this had a long layover in the sense of getting those sequels, where I think it was 83 was the original, and then 88 or something was the second, and then 89 was the third. So there was a long layover here. So those sequels really just hanging their hat on that original because there wasn't really anything unique about them. And again, just getting kids in a place to do a lot of kills. And I know, the argument is it's, Friday 13th to an extent, I think is that way as well. But at least they give you uniqueness in terms of the way Jason Voorhees kills people. Whereas this one, you may have a couple of unique things, but for something that is supposed to be such a pure slasher and gore fest, we don't really get that much.
This year, Camp's a real killer.
I mean, I don't know if we're getting into the kills now, but you have the one
Oh, go for it.
with the lawnmower, and it's like it very neutered in the sense of what we could show there. So you don't really get that much with it.
And I was gonna say that was probably what would have, out of all of them, that was my favorite kill. Just again, but what it could have been was something really extravagant and actually kind of elevate this to being like one of those horror films that's like, yeah, it's real grindhouse, real underground, but there are some gruesome kills in it. It really kind of turns this movie into being more of a nothing burger at the end of the day, because it's like you don't have any characters that are really all that interesting. Like you have that romance between two of them, that I guess you could say is kind of like there are our survivors. They're kind of like our final couple, if you want to put it that way. But even then, they undercut that by the end of the film when they're just like, oh yeah, like I'm happy that we survived, blah blah, and she's just like, oh, I have a boyfriend and all that stuff. It's like, oh, y'all were just fooling around. That's it. Okay, like life traumatic experience aside, I guess, whatever. But yeah, it is just one of those things where it's like, this is truly just, like I've been saying, like lower tier grindhouse, cut to shit, money grab kind of film. Like, it's using an established title like Sleepaway Camp, and clearly with the intent of how this movie was made, it was simply made to sell tickets. Because it was an easy property to grab. Of course, they weren't going to get Nightmare on Elm Street. They weren't going to get Friday the 13th. But the producers were like, well, we have Sleepaway Camp, so let's just use that title and its recognition, and let's just make some fucking money.
Yeah, they're like, just let's squeeze anything we can get out of this, and then by the time the audience figures out how horrible it is, well, we already got their cash. And that's honestly what it feels like. With this film, there aren't many positives. The only thing that I could really think of, I do enjoy Pamela Springsteen as Angela. I did enjoy in the second one. I do enjoy her in the third one. I love this kind of hokiness, kind of lame, goody two shoes almost to an extent, and then anyone who's where she says you're a cheerleader or a drug user, a fornicator, all that stuff. I think that stuff is pretty fun. And then when she's always singing the "I'm a Happy Camper" song,
Mhm.
I think that stuff is fun. I think her portrayal there is good. I'm glad they cast her for those two.
Oh
I,
yeah,
I
Pamela
think it's a lot of
Springsteen's
fun.
not horrible, and isn't it funny that she's Bruce Springsteen's sister?
Oh, is that? I did not know
Yeah,
that.
no, that's Bruce Springsteen's sister.
Well, she
Um,
went a different route with her career.
she did. But yeah, no, she's fine. Like she's great. I mean, you're never the actress who played Angela in the original
Felicia,
Felicia Rose.
yes,
She only came back for Return to Sleepaway Camp, I believe,
yeah,
right?
I think that's right.
Yeah, so but she has become like a B movie horror icon.
Yeah, she
Like, I
just
mean,
popped up in something that we had seen. I thought I can't remember. She was like a random
Terrifier
came.
2.
What was it?
Wasn't
That's what it
she?
was.
Yeah, Terrifier 2. She
Yep.
popped up for a minute.
Yes. She was a teacher on the school grounds when they were looking at that uh,
Yes.
possum or whatever it was.
Yes. Yeah, she was the one that I think came up and yelled at him, right?
Yes, that's her.
Nice. But yeah, no, there's all kinds of shit that she's in. I mean, let me pull her up on IMDb here, but like she has a ridiculous amount of credits, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 163 credits, and like I would say 90% of them are horror related.
Oh man.
So I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like that she works and she
Yeah,
does well. And
she's a
she's
familiar
not
face.
bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, she's definitely familiar. She's somebody that, when you see him pop up, you're definitely at least like, holy shit, it's Angela.
Yep.
And Pamela Springsteen, she does a serviceable job. She's fine. Again, just because I think you get the benefit of the doubt of her being Angela for both the sequel and this one. So she kind of gets, you get a little bit more time with her to establish her as taking over the role of Angela. So I mean, she has that working for her.
What's it gonna be?
A gun.
She has
Yeah.
that, like, at least to say, like, it's not like they just change the actress every single film.
Yeah. So I think she's fun. Honestly, that's probably my only shining light. It's kind of like Leprechaun 4 with Warwick Davis being the only shining light in terms of performance, whereas Pamela Springsteen isn't as notable as Warwick Davis, but I think she can hold the film together to the best extent that she can.
Yeah, and there was a couple of little fun facts I did pull here and wrote down just off to the side before we got on here. Some things I thought that were kind of interesting. So the red Ferrari at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the red Ferrari was driven, which was driven by the reporter character, was very expensive to rent. So the director, Michael A. Simpson, was the only one allowed to drive it. He'd move it from spot to spot when it would need to be shot, and made sure no fake blood got on the car during the reporter's death scene. So it was just one of those things where it's like, we rented this, we have it, but like we fuck this up, this could literally cripple the production.
They're like, this is the
So
budget right here, and we're gonna have
yeah,
it for a day.
exactly. And that's kind of why I was like, I'm going to highlight that, because it's like, it just shows how strapped for cash and just everything that they were going on for. Yeah, it's just, it's just such a tough fucking movie, man.
It
Like, I
is.
mean, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not that enjoyable to watch. I would say, again, if you're interested in the series, check it out. I mean, you could have some fun laughing at it, but I think that this would play a lot better, like if we were to, not saying that we would, just because of the kind of content that they portray. But it's just one of those things where it's like, if you could throw yourself into like a live stream or had a bunch of friends over
Yes.
and we're marathoning crappy horror, like sub film genres, this would be one of those where it's like,
This is
the
a
first one
community
is
film.
quality, but yeah, this is one where it's like, you could easily see this playing nowadays. Throw some tomatoes, everybody's yelling at the screen, kind of thing.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
it's like,
because
you can be as loud as you want because you're not really missing anything. So,
yeah, and it's like,
um,
it's not like it's going to be that hard to pick things back up once you've gotten away from it for a little bit.
absolutely.
As far as other little side notes that I was able to find here, one of the things was that the tagline of Teenage Wasteland, that is from the Who song, the Bubba O'Reilly,
Oh, okay.
because that was one of the director's favorite songs at the time. So he just was like, we need a subtitle for the movie because, again, they just slapped this shit together. So he's just like, fucking Teenage Wasteland.
Party all night! Teenage Wasteland!
So,
And then
yeah.
you just have the one character yell it. Perfect.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, the complete legacy of this film, man. It's just that
Yeah.
it was never supposed to be made. But when you do a good job, sometimes you get rewarded by getting to make another movie, and that's what they got. And it's one of those ones where it's like I finally got around to watching it because of this show. And I think that my life probably would have been a little better off had I not seen it. Just
I'm right there with you. These films, I do watch the original Sleepaway Camp from time to time. Second one's not horrible. It's not great either, but at least you can have a little more fun. You're not as offended as Sleepaway Camp 3. I think after watching this one to see if, it was worthy of our little segments here, I will say definitely it was. But this one will be going back into the depths of the shelf and the safe, locked away forever for me.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty safe to say that Sleepaway Camp 3 Teenage Wasteland is better off dead. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap us up here for this segment of Better Off Dead. Again, really enjoying this series, even though we got to watch some crappy movies. It is fun to talk about them. This one, again, not the greatest, but I think an interesting conversation, again, just with the fact of how this thing came together the way it did, and just the way it was, and just kind of the time period that it's in, and just kind of how it presents itself. It's truly in its own little bottle, I would say.
And that's really much like Critters 3 and 4, where I think they had one budget in terms of filming that third film and then kind of using the leftovers for 4, and it kind of really suffers because they wanted to do it more so in space, and they didn't really have the props to do so to make it kind of convincing, where it's like, especially these more so B or C level horror films were really just, they're like, here's an X amount of dollars, make 2 films.
Yep. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's a lesson to anybody who's got a bunch of money out there and you're making low budget horror films. Sometimes maybe just take that extra money, put it into your post-production, and don't worry about capitalizing on what's next. Just see how your film does before you go forward. But hey, it was 1989. We're coming down to the end of one of the greatest decades in horror, and coming into a little bit of a slow period.
Yeah.
Before that, so Lord knows what was on their mind at that point. It wasn't until Scream really came back and rejuvenated it in the 90s that you could say that things kind of pop back off for the slasher genre
in a very different way as well. So,
oh yeah, in a transformed kind of way. But yeah, I would be curious to check out the rest of this series. Though again, the first one is something I do have some experience with, so I would enjoy talking about that one at some point. And I think, the fact that this one is as bad as it is, but people still regard Return to Sleepaway Camp as the worst, I'm gonna have to check that movie out, man. Like, there's that one. Maybe next year, maybe next Halloween when this segment returns, we could find our way back here to Camp New Horizons, or whatever the hell they brand the camp in that one.
We'll see what happens. I often thought they/them would have been a good tie-in to Sleepaway Camp, but
you did bring that up. I think it wasn't in our review, but it was like maybe like a Sunday Scaries after or something.
I think so, yeah.
That was brought up, and I'm like, that would have been a fucking cool twist. You know what I mean? But hey,
wasn't meant to be.
Nope, it was not. But alrighty, guys, that's going to wrap us up here for this segment of Better Off Dead. Tune in next week where we discuss another film, kind of wrapping us up for these 4 segments for Halloween. And we are in the midst of the Splatterthon, of course, and we are still going strong here. Again, we do have a giveaway. There's a link in the description of this video. If you want to enter, you could win a copy of the Black Phone as well as a Splatterthon mug, which again is sitting over there for me. I need to remember to grab that before I record. But anyway, guys, yeah, that's that's going to wrap us up here for this. As always, you can follow us on our social media at Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at SplattercastPod to keep up with us on all the latest and greatest. And other than that, we do have some more content coming to you this week. We are still pumping out that Splatterthon content. Like we said, got episode 3 of Chucky to look forward to.
Oh boy, it's gonna be a
which
big one.
should be posting tonight because this comes out on Wednesday. And then, of course, we are going to continue our series of Halloween reviews, kind of coming down to the wire on that one with Halloween 3.
Yes.
So that's going to be a nice video. That one we have yet to record, so I don't know how long that's going to be, but I feel that could be a lengthy one. Which
I think it could be. You know, and if you love Halloween so much, Halloween 3 so much, you might want to check out another film that's very similar to it called Halloween Ends.
Oh my God! Don't even compare. Don't even compare. But I'm just kidding. But speaking of Halloween Ends, we do have reviews and a full spoiler breakdown for you already up on the channel for you to check out. If you have seen the movie, feel free to check that out. So that way you can kind of hear our thoughts on the film. We weren't huge on it, but hey, we're not here to rip anybody down, but we are interested to hear everybody's thoughts. So if you want to check that out, as well as the video essay, The Night He Almost Came Home, is available on the channel as well. Kind of going over, and thank you, going over an unmade Halloween sequel. So something we never got, and something in the retrospective of the Halloween franchise, maybe we should have. So
yes.
Alrighty, guys, but that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland.